At 18, Lydia Bell married a man whom 3 physicians had given 6 weeks to live. Before midnight, the Duke of Caldermere locked the bedchamber door, poured his medicine into the fire, and told his new bride the first truth of their marriage. He was not dying, he was being killed. This is a story of a ruined daughter, a proud man's debt. And the bride who refused to become the widow, everyone had already named her. Rain struck the windows of St. Anselm's Chapel like thrown gravel on the morning Lydia surrendered her name. The little stone church smelled of wet wool, candle grease, and the rosemary that had been scattered over the flagstones to disguise the damp. Beneath Lydia's thin satin slippers, the cold climbed steadily into her bones. Only 14 guests had come to watch a duke marry an apothecary's daughter. They had come not from affection, but curiosity. Lady Mortimer stood near the front in black feathers and whispered behind her glove, "6 weeks as a duchess is still longer than most girls receive." Her companion answered, "If he survives the wedding breakfast." Lydia heard both women. She kept her chin level. Beside her, Marquis Harcourt, 9th Duke of Caldermere, rested one gloved hand upon an ebony cane. He was 32, though illness had carved years beneath his eyes. His dark evening coat hung too loosely across his shoulders. A faint tremor moved through his fingers, and each breath seemed to cost him a private negotiation. Yet when the clergyman asked whether he would take Lydia as his lawful wife, Marcus's voice crossed the chapel without breaking. "I will." Lydia looked at him then. He did not look like a romantic hero. He looked like a man standing upright through force of command, too proud to let death see him bend. When her turn came, Lydia gave the answer expected of her. No one in the chapel knew that the marriage settlement had been signed at dawn. No one knew it placed £6,000 a year in jointure for Lydia if she survived him, or that £500 of pin money had been settled through trustees for her separate use. Under ordinary law, marriage swallowed a woman's property into her husband's control. Marcus had spent 3 nights arguing with his solicitors to ensure Lydia's small inheritance could never be touched by him, his heir, or any creditor of Caldermere. Lydia had not mistaken that protection for kindness. It was payment. 2 months earlier, after her father's death had left his apothecary shop shuttered and his reputation stained, creditors had begun removing chairs from the Bell family rooms. Lydia's aunt had sold her mourning brooch for coal. Her younger brother, Samuel, had been taken from school because 6 guineas remained unpaid. Then the dying Duke of Caldermere had sent a black carriage. His proposal contained no poetry. He would settle every lawful debt, restore Samuel to school, and provide Lydia with independence after his expected death. In return, she would marry him at once, reside at Caldermere Abbey, and ask no questions until their wedding night. Lydia had asked one anyway. "Why me?" His solicitor had lowered his eyes. "His Grace will tell you when you are beyond the reach of those who might prevent the match." That answer had carried her to the altar. Marcus's cousin and heir, Lord Alistair Harcourt, arrived after the vows. He swept into the chapel with rain shining on his shoulders, handsome and golden-haired, wearing an apology that reached everyone except his eyes. "The bridge flooded," he said. Marcus studied his dry boots. "How unfortunate!" Alistair kissed Lydia's hand. His fingers were warm, his smile practiced. "Welcome to the family, Your Grace." "I hope Caldermere brings you precisely what you deserve." The words sounded gracious. The pause before the final 3 made them something else. At the wedding breakfast, Marcus drank only barley water. Dr. Silas Wren, his personal physician, measured 12 dark drops from an amber bottle into the glass. The liquid carried a bitter green scent beneath the citrus peel. Lydia's hand stopped halfway to her plate. Dr. Wren noticed. "Is something troubling you, Duchess? What are you giving him?" Conversation around the table thinned. Wren was a narrow man with pale lashes and immaculate cuffs. "Foxglove," among other restoratives. His Grace suffers from a weakness of the heart and an accumulation of fluid. It is a respected treatment. In what quantity? Alistair laughed softly. How fortunate for us! The late Mr. Bell's little shop has supplied Caldermere with a second physician. Heat climbed Lydia's neck, but she did not lower her eyes. Her father had taught her to read labels before he had taught her to dance. She knew that foxglove could steady a failing heart and relieve dropsy. She also knew its mercy stood very near its violence. Too much brought nausea, faintness, confusion, and a pulse that stumbled like a horse on broken ground. Dr. Wren held her gaze while Marcus drank. The Duke's fingers tightened around the glass. For one dreadful second, Lydia thought he would fall before the wedding cake was cut. He did not yet. Caldermere Abbey rose from the Derbyshire hills beneath a roof of rain, all grey towers and narrow windows. By the time the carriage reached its courtyard, evening had erased the road behind them. Servants stood in two precise lines beneath the portico. Above their heads, carved saints watched the new Duchess arrive as if they had already judged her. Mrs. Fenwick, the housekeeper, curtsied deeply. "Welcome home, Your Grace." The word home almost undid Lydia. She had no home left. The rooms over her father's shop belonged to a linen merchant now. His brass mortar had been sold. His jars had been emptied and scrubbed of their labels. Even the blue-painted door had been repainted brown, as though Thomas Bell had never measured medicine there. Marcus swayed when he stepped from the carriage. Lydia caught his arm before Alistair could. Under the wool of his sleeve, the Duke's body felt cold. "I can walk," he murmured. Then do so more convincingly. His eyes turned toward her. For the first time that day, something almost alive moved in them. "You sound like your father." Before Lydia could answer, he pulled away and climbed the steps. The wedding chamber had been prepared with ruthless luxury. A fire burned behind a gilded screen. Beeswax candles filled the room with honeyed smoke. The great bed wore burgundy silk, and a white nightdress lay across it like a surrender flag. Lydia remained in her wedding gown. At 11, Marcus entered without his valet. He had changed into a black dressing coat, but no amount of dark cloth could hide the gray beneath his skin. He closed the door, turned the key, and placed it upon the mantel. Then he took the amber medicine bottle from his pocket. "Did Wren give you that?" Lydia asked. "He leaves a bottle beside my bed each night." Marcus uncorked it. The bitter smell reached her at once. He poured the contents into the hottest part of the fire. The flames hissed around the liquid. Lydia stared at him. "If that medicine is keeping your heart alive, you have just done a reckless thing. It is killing my heart." The rain seemed to fall harder. Marcus gripped the mantel until the tremor in his arm passed. 6 months ago I could ride from dawn until dinner. Then Wren began treating me for swelling in my feet. I grew weaker. He increased the drops. I began vomiting, losing my sight in yellow flashes, and waking with a pulse so slow I thought each beat would be the last. "Foxglove poisoning," Lydia whispered. "Your father used those words in a letter to me." She went still. Marcus crossed to a writing desk and opened a concealed drawer. From it he took a folded sheet, stained at one corner and broken at the seal. Lydia knew the careful hand before he held it out. "Your Grace, the medicine administered to you is no longer a remedy. Someone has altered the measure. If the daily dose continues, your death may appear entirely natural." The letter had been written 11 days before Thomas Bell was accused of selling diluted laudanum and falsifying accounts. The accusation destroyed his practice. Customers crossed the street rather than meet his eye. He died after a winter fever, owing money to every supplier in the county. Lydia read the page twice. "You received this." Marcus did not defend himself. "Yes, and you said nothing when they called him a thief." "I believed Wren. I believed Alistair. Your father had argued with both men, and they showed me accounts bearing his signature. Forgeries. I know that now." Lydia folded the letter with fingers that would not remain steady. You knew enough to find me. 3 weeks ago, my old steward discovered one of Wren's invoices hidden inside a book of household remedies. It ordered 4 times the foxglove entered in the medical account. He brought it to me and died the next morning after falling from the north stair. You think he was murdered. I think Caldermere has become a house where useful men suffer accidents. Marcus opened the desk again and removed a small leather-bound notebook. Lydia's breath caught. Her father's initials were pressed into the cover. Where did you get that? The steward found it with the invoice. Most of the final pages are written in your father's private shorthand. Wren cannot read it. Alistair cannot read it. But I can. Your father taught you. The whole shape of the marriage stood before her then. The paid debts, the hurried license, the generous jointure. Marcus had not selected a grateful poor girl to comfort his last days. He had raised Thomas Bell's daughter to a rank his enemies could not easily dismiss, then placed the evidence in her hands. You married me as a shield. No, his answer came low. I married you because I had already failed your father once, and because you are the only person I know whom these men have underestimated more completely than they underestimated him. That is not an apology. I have no apology large enough. She stepped close enough to see the feverish brightness in his eyes. Tell me everything, not the portion that serves you, not the version that makes your guilt tolerable. Marcus drew a difficult breath. Alistair inherits the title if I die without a son. He has managed parts of the estate since my illness began. Wren controls my medicines. I can accuse neither without proof, and if I dismiss them openly, they may abandon caution. I do not know which servants they have purchased. I do not know how long I have, and you expect me to save you. I expect you to decide whether I deserve to be saved. The answer struck harder than any plea. Lydia placed her father's notebook against her heart. I will not do this for you. Marcus inclined his head. I will do it for Thomas Bell. I will prove he was right. I will restore his name. If you live long enough to witness it, consider that an undeserved mercy. For the first time, the Duke of Caldermere bowed to his own wife. As you command, your grace. By morning, Lydia had counted every bottle in the Duke's dressing room. There were 7. Dr. Wren objected when she ordered them locked inside a small walnut cabinet and placed the key on a ribbon around her neck. Your Grace, he said, choosing patience as one might choose a clean instrument. Your husband's condition cannot be managed by a young lady's recollection of an apothecary counter. Lydia stood beside Marcus's bed. Pale winter light revealed the violet shadows beneath his eyes. Then you will explain each preparation, its measure, and its purpose. Medical practice is not a parlor lesson. No. It concerns whether my husband sees Christmas. I find that more important than your pride. Alistair leaned against the window. Cousin, are you truly comfortable placing your life in the hands of an 18-year-old bride? Marcus looked toward Lydia. She waited to see whether old habits would master him. My wife speaks with my authority, he said. You will answer her. Wren's mouth flattened. The physician listed tincture of foxglove, antimonial wine, laudanum for sleep, hartshorn for faintness, and a cordial of orange peel and gentian. Lydia wrote each measure on a fresh sheet. Apothecaries often marked quantities in Latin abbreviations that could turn a careless stroke into a dangerous dose. Her father had made her copy them until her wrist ached. She knew the difference between 12 minims and 12 drams was not merely ink. It was a funeral. When Wren finished, Lydia asked, Who prepares the nightly glass? I do. Who carries it upstairs, mister? Phelps, the under-butler. Who has access after it leaves your hand? Wren smiled without warmth. The entire household, if your grace intends to suspect them all, only those who resent being asked. Marcus coughed to conceal something that might have been a laugh. For 5 days, Lydia gave him no foxglove. An independent physician from Nottingham, Dr. Nathaniel Royce, arrived under the pretense of visiting an elderly aunt in the village. He examined Marcus privately and agreed that the Duke's pulse was dangerously irregular. But he found no swelling that required continued digitalis. He prescribed rest, thin broth, and careful observation rather than another violent remedy. The first 2 days were dreadful. Marcus retched until there was nothing left. He woke drenched in cold sweat, speaking broken fragments of old hunting fields and his mother's funeral. Lydia sat beside the bed with her father's notebook open across her knees, recording the hour of every pulse and every sip. On the 3rd morning, Marcus asked for toast. On the 4th, he crossed the room without his cane. On the 5th, he stood at the window and watched the stable boys exercise a black mare in the frost. "Her name is Vesper," he said. "I have not ridden her since spring. You will not ride her today. You have become alarmingly fond of commands, and you have survived long enough to complain." The corner of his mouth lifted. Lydia looked back at the notebook before he could see what that small expression had done to her. Improvement was not proof. That evening, the bell above the servants' passage rang 3 times for the blue bedchamber, though no guest occupied it. Great houses used numbered bellboards so servants could see which room had called without running through every corridor. Mrs. Fenwick frowned at the trembling brass marker. "That wire was disconnected last year." Lydia followed the sound upstairs. The blue bedchamber stood at the end of the west gallery. Inside, the air smelled of dust and lavender. A single drawer had been pulled open in the writing desk. On the carpet beneath it lay a torn corner of paper bearing her father's initials. Someone had searched the room moments before. The adjoining dressing-room door moved softly against its frame. Lydia crossed the chamber and opened it. No one stood inside, but on the windowsill, melting into the wood, was a crescent of fresh snow. That night she placed a chair beneath her own door handle. Marcus found it there when he came at dawn, already dressed, his face colorless with anger. "Why did you go to the west gallery alone?" "Because someone rang a dead bell. You should have summoned me. You could barely climb one staircase yesterday. I would rather fall on those stairs than find you harmed because of me." Lydia closed the notebook. "Because I am useful?" His answer did not come quickly enough. She turned away. "Lydia." It was the first time he had spoken her Christian name. "I have spent much of my life believing that protection and control were the same thing," he said. "They are not. I know that because you have obeyed almost none of my instructions, and I have been safer every day since." She faced him again. Marcus held out a small key. "My private archive. Every estate letter from the last 10 years. No one enters without this. Not even you. Especially not me, if you decide I am hiding another truth." The archive occupied a room behind the library, where the stone walls kept summer heat from warping old parchment. Lydia spent 2 days among rent rolls, correspondence, seed catalogs, and bundles of receipts tied with faded tape. She did not search for a dramatic confession. Guilty men rarely wrote one. She searched for repetition. Her father had taught her that error left patterns. Every 3 weeks, Wren ordered foxglove leaf through a London wholesaler, yet the estate's official medical expenses showed only 1 delivery in 6 months. The missing purchases had been entered elsewhere as dye for the household laundry. Purple foxglove did not dye linen. Someone had hidden medicine among domestic accounts because no physician would review them. The approvals bore Alistair's initials. Still, initials could be copied. Lydia found a second pattern in the estate post book. Letters from Thomas Bell had been received on 3 dates. Marcus remembered only one. "Who opened your correspondence during the spring?" she asked him. "Alistair, when I first became ill. Then my father warned you 3 times. Marcus stared at the post book. "I saw 1 letter. You chose not to investigate one letter. Someone made certain you never saw the other two. He shut his eyes. Lydia wanted his guilt to satisfy her. Instead, the sight of it pressed against a part of her heart she did not wish to examine. The following afternoon, Marcus walked with her through the tenant cottages. The wind smelled of peat smoke and frozen earth. Children came to doors without shoes. A widow named Mrs. Treadwell showed Lydia a rent demand signed by Alistair, adding a winter levy no lease permitted. Marcus read it twice. This was issued in my name. Your cousin said the house required economies, Mrs. Treadwell whispered. On the return journey, Marcus stopped at the edge of a field gone brown under frost. I believed he was preserving Caldermere while I was ill. You believed many convenient things. He took the rebuke without anger. What would you do? The question surprised her. Cancel the levy. Return what was already collected. Open the south granary at the old price until the thaw. That will cost the estate nearly £800. Your wedding breakfast cost £300. Marcus looked toward the Abbey towers. Do it. I have no legal power to issue the order. You have mine. That evening he summoned his trustees and placed the cottage relief fund under Lydia's direction. The law might have folded her identity beneath her husband's, but Marcus used every instrument his solicitors could devise to give her room within it. He did not present the act as a gift. He presented it as correction. For the first time since entering Caldermere, Lydia wondered who he might become if he lived. 3 days later, Marcus asked her to walk with him to the old still-room. It stood beyond the kitchens, half below ground, where the Abbey's women had once distilled lavender water, peppermint cordial, and rosemary wash. Copper pans hung blackened above a cold range. Dried herbs remained suspended from the ceiling beams, though most had lost their color years ago. In one corner, a narrow cabinet held medicine bottles, with paper caps tied over their necks to keep damp and dust from the cork. My mother closed this room before she died, Marcus said. Wren said household remedies encourage servants to distrust proper medicine. Lydia ran one finger across the cabinet latch. A physician who wants every bottle to pass through his hand does not object to superstition. He objects to witnesses. The lock had rusted. Marcus tried the key once, then braced his shoulder against the wood. You are meant to be recovering, Lydia said. I am opening a cupboard. With the same expression other men reserve for battle. The cupboard has insulted me. The door gave way with a crack. A cloud of dried mint and dust rose into the air. Marcus coughed, and Lydia caught his sleeve, but he lifted one hand to show he could breathe. Inside stood rows of labeled jars: chamomile, willow bark, horehound, mustard seed, and dried foxglove leaves marked with a red thread. Lydia reached for the foxglove, then stopped. The jar was nearly empty. Her father's notebook recorded that he had sealed 4 ounces there during the former Duchess's illness. The household book showed no authorized use after her death. Someone had been taking small quantities for years, long before Wren's London orders began. Marcus looked at the red thread. Your father's mark, danger beside mercy. Behind the jar lay a child's wooden counting frame. Lydia drew it out and found numbers scratched along the edge in Thomas Bell's hand. Her father had used such frames to teach apprentices proportions. 1 grain to 20, 1 drop to 60, 1 error to a grave. He brought me here once, she said. I was 9, your mother had a fever, and father worked through the night. I slept beneath that table wrapped in his coat. Marcus glanced at the stone floor. I remember a child in the passage. You had ink on your nose. Lydia looked up. You saw me? I was 23 and too important to ask your name. You were a duke's heir. Importance was practically a medical condition. His laugh came unexpectedly, warm and brief. It changed his face so completely that Lydia forgot the cold room around them. Then his gaze lowered to the counting frame in her hands. I knew your father was an honest man before the accusations, he said. That is the part I have not said plainly enough. When Alistair showed me the accounts, I accepted them, because illness had made me frightened and pride made me lazy. But somewhere beneath both I knew. Lydia set the frame on the table. Why tell me that now? Because each day you remain I am tempted to show you only the man I might become. You deserve to remember the man I was. The still room held no sound but the faint drip of water in the sink. Lydia had imagined his apology many times during her father's final winter. In those imaginings, a great man knelt while Thomas Bell stood vindicated. The fantasy had never included Marcus gaunt from poison, confessing without hope of reward. "My father waited for your answer," she said. Every hoofbeat in the street made him look toward the window. Marcus's jaw tightened. It never came. No. On the last morning he could stand, he polished his brass plate. He said a man's name should be clean even when the world was not. Marcus pressed his hand against the table as if the old wood alone kept him upright. "I am sorry." The words were small. Their very smallness made them true. Lydia's anger did not disappear. Grief did not loosen its grip, but something between them shifted from debt toward honesty. She stepped near enough to straighten the scarf at his throat, which had twisted when he forced the cabinet open. Marcus did not move. His breath touched her temple. For one suspended moment, the cold still room felt warmer than the wedding chamber had. Then a glass jar shattered in the corridor. Marcus drew Lydia behind him as the door swung inward. No one stood there. On the floor lay a white physician's glove weighted with a stone. Across its palm someone had written 3 words in dark ink: "The bride drinks next." Marcus bent to reach for it. "Do not touch the ink," Lydia warned. "If Wren prepared it, even the threat may carry poison." She used iron tongs from the range to place the glove inside a copper basin. Beneath it, scratched into the stone threshold, was the same false mark that appeared beside the hidden laundry purchases. The warning had given them something its author never intended, not fear, a signature. Alistair wondered too. At dinner, he raised his wineglass toward the Duke. "To unexpected recoveries." Marcus drank water. "You do not sound pleased. I am astonished. Our dear Lydia has achieved in a fortnight what Wren could not achieve in half a year." Dr. Wren cut his meat with slow precision. Temporary rallies are common before the end. Lydia met his pale eyes. "Then you will not object to another physician observing the rally." The knife stopped against the plate. Only for a moment. That same night, Samuel Bell disappeared from his school in Nottingham. The headmaster's letter arrived at breakfast, the black wax cracked by hurried hands. A gentleman had collected the boy, claiming the Duchess required him at Caldermere. The gentleman carried a letter bearing Lydia's copied signature. Marcus was on his feet before she finished reading. "I will send riders. Send them to the North Road," Lydia said. Alistair, seated across the table, lifted his brows. "Why north?" Lydia folded the letter. "Because the South Road is flooded." His glance flicked toward the windows. The rain had stopped 4 days earlier. Marcus saw it. So did Lydia. Alistair smiled. A figure of speech. The riders found Samuel before sunset at an abandoned toll house 12 miles north. He was cold and frightened but unharmed. The hired coachman had fled when he heard horses approaching. In Samuel's coat pocket, Lydia found a note. "Return the notebook, and the next carriage will not be so easy to follow." She crushed the paper in her fist. Marcus entered the nursery where Samuel slept before the fire. "Royce has examined him. He will recover. They used a child because they could not frighten me. I brought you into this house. Do not make my choice smaller so your guilt can grow larger." I remained after I knew the danger. He stood very still. "Why?" Lydia looked at her brother's sleeping face. "At first for my father, and now?" She should have answered at once. The silence told him what she could not. Marcus came no closer. "When this is finished, the settlement gives you the use of Bell House in Bath. If you wish to leave Caldermere, no one will stop you. Is that what you wish? What I wish has already cost your family enough." Lydia turned to the fire, angry with him for the honor of the answer, and angrier with herself for wanting him to say something less honorable. Behind them, Samuel stirred. "Liddy," he murmured, eyes still closed. The man with the white gloves said father should have kept quiet. Lydia and Marcus looked at one another. Dr. Wren always wore white gloves outdoors, even in summer. The next morning, Wren was gone. His rooms had been cleared. The grate held the remains of burned correspondence. In the washstand, Lydia found a gray ash mixed with slivers of red sealing wax. On Wren's desk lay an empty space where his medical case had rested. Alistair expressed outrage. "The man has betrayed us all." Marcus watched him from across the library. "You recommended him. Half the county recommended him. You paid his private debts." Alistair's face changed. "I paid a gaming note as a courtesy." Lydia placed one of the laundry invoices on the table. "You also approved his hidden foxglove orders. My clerk placed those initials. Then call him. He left Caldermere in September. How convenient." Alistair's smile vanished. "Take care, cousin. Your young wife is beginning to enjoy accusation." Marcus stepped between them. "My wife may say anything she pleases in this house, even when she is wrong, especially then. It is a freedom I denied her father." The confession struck the room silent. Alistair recovered first. "You are unwell, not as unwell as you require." Alistair left before noon, claiming business in London. He never passed the south gate. Mrs. Fenwick saw him cross the inner courtyard toward the old orangery, a glass house long closed after storm damage. Lydia and Marcus followed at a distance through the kitchen garden. Frost silvered the rosemary hedges. Inside the orangery, broken panes admitted strips of white sky. They found no Alistair. They found Dr. Wren's medical case. It lay beneath a potting bench with its brass clasps open. Most of the bottles had been removed. One remained, wrapped in blue paper and marked with a dosage 4 times greater than the measure Wren had declared. Beside it lay Thomas Bell's second letter to Marcus. The seal had been broken years earlier. "My lord, I examined the powder sent under Dr. Wren's name. It contains foxglove in a strength no careful physician would prescribe. Lord Alistair has asked me to alter the entry. I refused." Marcus read the lines with one hand braced against the bench. "This would have saved him. It may still clear him," Lydia said. "That is not the same." "No," he lifted his eyes to hers. "I cannot ask you to forgive me." "Then stop asking without words." Something moved behind the broken glass. A stone struck the floor near Lydia's feet. Marcus pulled her backward as a second stone shattered a remaining pane. By the time the grooms reached the outside wall, the garden beyond it was empty. Mrs. Fenwick carried the medical case to the Abbey under guard. At dusk, the independent physician, Dr. Royce, examined its contents and signed a statement. The county magistrate agreed to come at 10 the next morning. Proof had finally entered the house. Before sunrise, Marcus collapsed. Lydia woke to the violent ringing of the bell beside his bed. She ran barefoot through the connecting door and found him on the carpet, one hand pressed to his chest. His breakfast tray stood untouched. The water glass beside him smelled faintly of orange peel. His pulse fluttered beneath her fingers, then slowed. "Marcus, look at me." His eyes opened unfocused yellow vision. The poison had returned. Lydia shouted for Dr. Royce and forced Marcus to drink warm water mixed with mustard, the quickest emetic the household could prepare. He retched until his body shook. Royce arrived moments later, listened to the failing rhythm of the Duke's heart, and ordered heat, stillness, and constant watch. In the corridor, servants gathered in nightclothes and livery. Alistair stood among them. He had never left the house. "What has she done?" he demanded. Lydia rose from beside the bed. "Who brought this water?" Mr. Phelps, the under-butler, began to tremble. "Her Grace ordered it," he said. "I did not." Phelps pointed toward her dressing room. "The bottle is there. I saw it." Mrs. Fenwick searched the room in the presence of 2 footmen. She returned carrying a blue-wrapped bottle from beneath Lydia's traveling cloak. It matched the one found in Wren's case. Alistair's grief arrived beautifully. "Dear God!" he whispered. "She married him for the jointure." Lydia stared at the bottle. The trap was complete. The poor apothecary's daughter had taken charge of a dying man's medicine. She had removed his trusted physician, secured £6,000 a year upon his death, and kept the poison in her own chamber. Even innocence could look ugly when arranged by skilled hands. The magistrate arrived early. Sir William Dacre was a square, careful man who disliked scandal but disliked murder more. He heard Phelps's statement, examined the bottle, and ordered Lydia confined to the blue bedchamber until Marcus could speak. Marcus could not speak. As the door closed behind her, Lydia understood why the dead bell had rung there. Someone had searched the room because someone had prepared it for her. Hours passed. The fire burned low. She tested the door twice and the windows once. The drop to the terrace was too far. On the writing desk, the torn corner bearing her father's initials remained where she had found it. Lydia knelt beside the desk. The fragment had not fallen from a drawer. It protruded from the narrow gap behind the back panel. She removed a hairpin and worked it beneath the wood until the panel loosened. Inside lay a packet of letters tied with blue thread. Thomas Bell had hidden them there while serving Caldermere's former Duchess during her final illness. They were not letters to Marcus. They were copies of orders sent by Alistair to a London drug broker, requesting dried foxglove under the false name A. Hart. Each order coincided with a worsening of Marcus's symptoms. The last paper was newer. It contained instructions to pay Mr. Phelps £50 after the Duchess is found with the blue bottle. Lydia pressed the papers to her chest. Proof stood on the other side of a locked door. The old bell wire ran behind the faded silk near the bed. Mrs. Fenwick had said it was disconnected, but the brass pull remained. Lydia drew it once. Nothing. She opened her father's notebook to the margin where he had sketched the service passages of the Abbey while treating the former Duchess. A note beside the blue chamber read, "Wire diverted to linen stair after west renovation." Lydia pulled 3 times, paused, then twice. It was the pattern Thomas Bell had used in the shop when he needed his daughter immediately. 3. Pause. 2. Far below, Metal answered. Mrs. Fenwick came through the linen room passage 20 minutes later carrying a ring of household keys. "Your father taught me that signal," she said, "when the old Duchess was ill." Lydia handed her the packet. "Take these to Sir William. Do not tell Phelps. Do not tell anyone loyal to Lord Alistair. And you, I am going to my husband." Marcus remained alive, but Dr. Royce could promise nothing beyond the next hour. Alistair stood near the bed with the family solicitor and spoke in a lowered voice about the transfer of estate authority. He claimed the Duke's seal was required before consciousness failed entirely. On the table lay a document appointing Alistair sole manager of the Caldermere properties. Marcus's hand rested beside a pen. Lydia entered through the connecting dressing room. Alistair's face hardened. "You are confined. By a magistrate, not by you. You poisoned him. Then you have nothing to fear from what he might say." She moved to the bed. Marcus's eyelids lifted at the sound of her voice. "Do not sign," she told him. Alistair caught her wrist. "Your performance is finished." Lydia looked down at his hand. "Remove it." The authority in her voice made even the solicitor step back. Alistair released her with a laugh. "You are still the little girl behind Bell's counter." "Yes," Lydia said. "That is why I noticed what you did not." She lifted the blue bottle found in her chamber. "This bottle contains no foxglove." The room went quiet. Dr. Royce uncorked it, touched 1 drop to a porcelain dish, and smelled it. Gentian and burnt sugar. Alistair's eyes shifted. Lydia had replaced the dangerous preparation in Wren's case the moment it was found in the orangery. She had given the real bottle to Dr. Royce for safekeeping and wrapped a harmless cordial in its paper. Whoever planted the decoy in her room had never checked its contents. "If I meant to poison my husband," she said, "I chose a remarkably ineffective poison." Phelps appeared in the doorway between two constables. Mrs. Fenwick stood behind him with Thomas Bell's packet. The under-butler's courage broke first. "My lord promised it would look natural," he cried. "He said his grace was dying already. I only changed the water." Dr. Wren prepared the drops. Alistair lunged for the document on the table, but Sir William Dacre entered from the corridor and took it before he could reach the fire. "Lord Alistair," the magistrate said, "you will remain where you are." Alistair's composure fell away. "You would believe servants and a tradesman's daughter over a Harcourt?" Lydia faced him across the bed. "My father was a tradesman. He measured life and death by grains, while you could not measure the cost of your own greed." Alistair pointed toward Marcus. "He would have wasted everything. The estate was drowning in debt. I preserved it. By stealing winter levies from barefoot children, by preparing to lead it." Marcus's voice came from the bed, little more than breath. "You were never fit." Every head turned. The Duke's eyes were open. Alistair stared at the man he had spent 6 months burying. Marcus lifted one shaking hand, not toward his cousin, but toward Lydia. She took it. "My wife," he said, each word scraped from pain, "speaks with my authority." Alistair laughed once, a broken sound. "Your wife married a corpse." Lydia tightened her fingers around Marcus's hand. "No," she said, "I married the witness who survived you." Sir William gave the constables their order. Alistair was taken from Caldermere through the same hall in which he had welcomed Lydia with a threat disguised as courtesy. Phelps confessed before noon. Dr. Wren was arrested 2 days later at a coaching inn outside Leicester, carrying 60 guineas and a packet of foxglove powder sewn into the lining of his case. The conspiracy did not end in a ballroom or beneath admiring chandeliers. It ended in sworn statements, seized correspondence, medical testimony, and the slow humiliation of men who had trusted rank to make their lives respectable. Marcus lived through the day, then the night, then another morning. Recovery came without grandeur. It came in spoonfuls of broth, warmed bricks at his feet, and long hours when Lydia counted a pulse that refused to settle. Some damage to his heart would remain. Dr. Royce warned that he might never hunt again or ride from dawn until dark. Marcus listened without complaint. "I was given 6 weeks," he said. "I have been returned every hour after them." When he could sit at his desk, his first act was not to punish his cousin. The law had taken that duty. He wrote a public declaration for the county newspapers, clearing Thomas Bell of every accusation. He included copies of the forged accounts, Dr. Wren's confession, and his own failure to investigate the warnings he had received. Lydia read the final page. "You have named yourself. I was part of what happened. People will call you a fool. They will be correct. Some will call you dishonorable." Marcus looked at her. "They will be correct about that, too." She laid down the paper. "And if I never forgive you—" His hand closed around the arm of the chair, but his voice remained steady. "Then the truth will still belong to your father." The declaration appeared in 6 newspapers. Samuel returned to school with every debt paid in Thomas Bell's restored name. Former patients wrote to Lydia describing the remedies her father had prepared, the infants he had treated without fee, and the winter nights he had crossed flooded roads to attend laboring women. Their letters filled a cedar box in the library. Marcus never asked Lydia to read them aloud. He simply made certain the box remained unlocked. In February, when snow lay against the Abbey steps, he brought her the keys to Bell House in Bath. "It is ready," he said. "The servants have been engaged in your name. Your trust will cover every expense." Lydia turned the keys in her palm. "You still believe I want to leave. I believe you must be free to. And if I stay—" For the first time since their wedding, the Duke seemed afraid of an answer. "Then I will spend whatever life remains to me becoming a man whose house does not feel like a prison." Lydia walked to the window. Below, Vesper crossed the snowy paddock, black against white. Marcus had not ridden the mare again. He no longer measured strength by what he could command his body to endure. "On our wedding night," Lydia said, "you told me you were being killed." "Yes." That was not the whole truth. He waited. "You were also the man who helped ruin my father." "Yes." "You married me because you needed me." "Yes." "And somewhere between the poisoned glass and the blue bedchamber, you began to love me." Marcus's breath caught. He did not insult her by denying it. "Yes." Lydia turned from the window. "Then here is my truth. I cannot love the man who ignored my father's warning." His face went still. She crossed the room and placed the keys to Bell House upon the desk. "But I may love the man who printed his guilt beside my father's innocence. I may love the man who opened the granary, returned stolen rent, and gave his wife the freedom to walk away." Marcus rose slowly. "Lydia, do not promise me forever. You nearly died promising yourself 6 weeks. What may I promise?" She placed her hand against his cheek. Warmth lived there now. "Tomorrow. Promise it honestly when it arrives." He covered her hand with his. "Tomorrow," he said. They began with that. A year after the wedding, the south wing of Caldermere opened as the Thomas Bell Dispensary. It served the estate villages without charge. Lydia supervised its accounts through the trust Marcus had established, and Dr. Royce trained 2 local apprentices under the rule written above the medicine cabinet: "The dose must heal, not merely impress." Marcus walked there each morning, sometimes with a cane, always beside his wife. The ton continued to discuss their marriage. Some called Lydia fortunate. Others called her calculating. Lady Mortimer, who had once granted her 6 weeks as a duchess, came to Caldermere, asking for treatment for a servant's child. Lydia helped the child. She did not mention the chapel. In the dispensary window, beneath a square of clear glass, lay one pressed purple foxglove. A red thread crossed its stem. Thomas Bell had used the mark in his notebook to mean danger held beside mercy. On winter evenings, when rain struck the abbey windows, Marcus sometimes woke at the remembered taste of bitter orange. Lydia would place 2 fingers against his wrist until the rhythm steadied. Neither pretended the past had vanished. They had built something stronger than forgetting. They had built a life in which the truth could remain. And each morning, when tomorrow arrived, the Duke kept his promise again. Thank you for watching Lydia and Marcus's complete story. A tale about truth, accountability, and a young woman who refused to let powerful men bury her father twice. If Lydia's courage stayed with you, please like this video. It helps the algorithm bring more full historical romance dramas to viewers who love them. Share this story with a fellow historical romance lover and subscribe with notifications turned on, so you do not miss the next journey into the candlelit secrets of Belgrave. Before you go, tell me in the comments, could you have forgiven Marcus after he publicly admitted his part in destroying Thomas Bell's name, or would you have taken the keys to Bell House and left?